So, have you ever asked yourself what happens to the world and U.S. citizens if Donald Trump invades Greenland? If you have, and you don't know the answers, or you want to know the answers, you might follow along for a second here. Because what I'm about to tell you is the most likely scenario for the world and for Americans. So the moment we touch Greenland, if the United States follows through on the threat to invade Greenland, we need to be crystal clear about what happens the next morning. We need to know that. This is not a real estate transaction or a routine military exercise. It is the geopolitical equivalent of pulling the pin on a grenade in a crowded elevator. The moment American boots hit the ground and nuke to seize territory from a fellow NATO member, the world as we know it ends. The way I grew up, the way you grew up, the way our kids will grow up, our grandchildren will change dramatically. So these are the consequences. The consequence will not be temporary sanctions or angry letters. They will be total, permanent, and devastating. The first domino to fall is the North Atlantic Treaty Organization itself. NATO is built on the sacred promise of Article 5 that an attack on one is an attack on all. If the U.S. attacks Denmark, we are not just breaking the treaty, we are triggering it against ourselves. They say if you live in an HOA and you sue the HOA, you're suing yourself. If you understand logic, you'll get that. I don't expect that a lot of people will get that, on the left or the right. But as I said, we are not just breaking the treaty, we are triggering it against ourselves. So NATO dissolves instantly. The alliance that kept peace in Europe for 75 years evaporates, leaving the continent to rearm and realign against the new aggressor across the Atlantic, which is the United States, right? We don't just lose an ally, we create a unified enemy, of which Donald Trump is really good at doing these days. The military repercussions will be swift and humiliating. Europe will immediately demand the closure of every U.S. military base on the continent. Let that sink in. Ramstein in Germany, Aviano in Italy, Lakenheath in the UK, all gone. All gone. Our ability to project power into the Middle East and Africa vanishes overnight. We will be evicted from the very soil we helped liberate and defended for decades. Hear that, Oathbreakers? Forced to retreat to our own shores as a fortress nation, isolated and friendless. If you don't know what isolation means or to what it would mean to isolate this country, you better go read about it. Then comes the economic nuclear option. The European Union is the largest single market in the world, and they will weaponize it. Wars are fought economically more so than militarily these days. So Europe will likely move to call in U.S. debt and dump their dollar reserve, sending the value of our currency into a death spiral. The U.S. economy, which relies on the dollar being the global reserve currency, will collapse. Inflation will make the post-COVID spikes look like a rounding error. Your savings will be worthless before the ink dries on the invasion orders. Corporate America will face an extinction event. U.S. companies will be expelled from the European market. Apple, Google, McDonald's, and Tesla will see their assets seized or their operations banned. That means less jobs for Americans. It gets worse for those over there. So their operations will be banned. Trillions of dollars in the market capitalization will be incinerated in minutes. The stock market will not just crash, it will close. So we have fail-safes built into the stock market. When stocks sink too low, they shut it down, okay? You've seen this happen in our lifetimes, and I believe it even happened maybe once this year in Donald Trump's term when he first started. So we're talking about the complete deglobalization of American industry, cutting us off from the wealthiest consumers on the planet. The skies will go silent. European aviation authorities will almost certainly ground all Boeing jets and ban U.S. airlines from their airspace. Transatlantic travel will cease. If you're in Paris or Berlin, you're stuck there. The logistical arteries that feed our supply chains will be severed. We will be cut off from European medicine, of which there are tons of pharmaceutical companies that provide everything from insulin to all kinds of other things. So if you're diabetic and you need insulin, you're going to have a very hard time getting it. And I think you know, as someone that needs insulin, what that might mean for you in a worst case scenario. Okay? So once again, we will be cut off from European medicine, machinery, and technology. We will be an island nation in the worst possible sense. The cultural isolation will be just as stinging. And for someone like me that has a passport and travels the world regularly and enjoys other cultures and other people, this is not easy for me to handle. I do not appreciate what Donald Trump has done to our reputation. Now, MAGA, I know you love to hate and you don't give a shit, but you will give a shit if Donald Trump invades Greenland. So the International Olympic Committee, most likely, and FIFA will have no choice but to bar the United States from competition, just as they did with Russia. Remember that, guys? Remember that? There will be no World Cup matches in New Jersey. There will be no Team USA in the Olympics. We will be treated as a pariah state, unwelcome on global stage, forced to watch the world celebrate without us. And MAGA corners the market on ostracizing any bit of intelligent entertainment. Musicians, actors, everything. If Donald Trump hates them, they hate him. So, of course, they're going to screw themselves in that sense. All right? For individual Americans, the consequences will be personal and painful. Visa-free travel to Europe will end immediately. Americans currently living or working in Europe will lose their legal protections and residency status. They will become persona non grata. Go look it up. Potentially facing deportation or internment. Potentially. Not saying that's going to happen. I'm sure lots of Europeans realize that there are a lot of intelligent Americans that are on the right side of history as opposed to them laughing at all the maggots out there. Anyways, the blue passport that used to open every door will suddenly be a red flag at every border crossing. This is the end of trust, and it does not reset. You cannot invade a democratic ally and then just say, my bad, 4 years later. The psychological break will be permanent. Europe will realize that the United States is no longer a partner, but a predator. They will build their own defense architecture, their own financial systems, and their own alliances that specifically exclude the United States. The West will continue, but the United States will no longer be a part of it. Invading Greenland is not a show of strength. It is an act of national suicide. We are trading our reputation, our economy, and our security for a frozen island with a handful of minerals we can't even process. And minerals that could be obtained through kindness and diplomacy rather than force. And in case you aren't aware, you only need to look back on people like Adolf Hitler, Mussolini, Japan bombing Pearl Harbor to understand how that went for them. They tried to use force, and ultimately they lost. All right? So the price of this real estate deal is everything we built over the last century. That's the price. Everything we built over the last century. Everything that our grandparents fought for and died for. Our parents, whomever, that ever served in the military, that fought fascism. Everything. That's the cost. If we cross this line, there's no going back. We will be the lonely superpower ruling over nothing but our own decline. Nothing but our own decline. But you know who won't suffer? Donald Trump. Donald Trump won't suffer. The billionaires won't suffer. Everyone that Donald Trump shields, they will not suffer. But we will. Food for thought.